your screen printing station setup. So here are some of the things that you need: a screen, a squeegee, printing ink spatula, mylar, water and sponge, printing and proofing paper, screen spacers, and some painter's tape. These are all the items here that I just mentioned. So the bucket of water and a sponge is for cleaning up your station after you're done printing, so you can clean where you're at. Printing paper, I've already torn it down to the size that I want to print at, and I also have a bunch of proofing paper in front of my printing station here. That's where I can proof if things aren't going well. I can kind of clear out a screen using the proofing paper, not my good printing paper. I've got my squeegee and a squeegee holder. So the squeegee holder keeps the ink off the table and off the surface when I'm printing. The squeegee itself should be at least an inch larger than the stencils on each side, so you can see how I've got plenty of space to pull this way, but not enough space to pull it that way. Set this to the side. Then I also have my blue painter's tape. This is going to be used to block out any little holes that I have on the screen, as well as my printing ink. I'm going to be printing this light color for my first print, and a spatula to pull the ink out of the container. And then you see the mylar sitting on top here as well, and this is what I'm going to use to register my print to the paper and from one color to the next. The mylar should be larger than my printed image, so you can see those two stencils that I'm going to be printing, so it's bigger than that space, and generally leaves enough space to put the paper underneath of it as well. So I always like to clean my printing station first, so I've got a spray bottle with water and some paper towels. Soapy water works, or just regular water, and I'm just wiping it down to make sure there's nothing on this bed that I don't want to get on my paper. No oily substances, no old ink. And once that's clean, then I'll start setting up the rest of the stuff here. So I'm going to take my screen. The screen is going to go flat side down. You always want to make sure there's nothing pointy or sharp on the bed of the area that you're printing so that you don't puncture the screen. And then the screen will go into these clips. So the clips operate like a screw or a bolt, so righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So right to tighten down the screen, left to loosen it off the screen. So you want to make sure that this is pushed all the way in, so the frame is pushed all the way against the back of these clamps, and then tighten it down really well so that the screen isn't going to shift around on you when you're printing. So you can give it like a little jiggle afterwards to make sure it's clamped in there well, or you can just shake the screen a little bit. So now I'm grabbing some cardstock, and I'm going to be using this as screen spacers. So they're cut, the cardstock's cut into little squares. You can also use chipboard. You could use something else, something that's like kind of soft that we can put on the frame of the screen. You can see the frame of the screen kind of sits at an angle here. So I'm trying to raise it up so that the frame is at an even height all the way across, and so that I get good snap back after I push down the screen and push ink through. So I'm taping a couple pieces of cardstock together. I can reuse these over and over. And then I get another piece of painter's tape, and that's what I'm going to be using to attach it to the screen frame. So I'm talking about the bounce back there that I'm looking for. So I'm going to take these two and put it just on the front edges of the screen. So you can see it's on the actual metal frame, not on the mesh, right on the corners there. And it should be making contact with the printing bed below. And so now I'm looking also with the painter's tape. I want to see if there's any little pinholes or any areas that ink might come through the mesh of the screen where I don't want it to. So I see a couple of small holes here. It's best if you can hold the screen up so that you can see light coming through. So I'm blocking those off, and then there's like a little strip at the top of this that I want to make sure no ink accidentally squeezes through. You put the tape on the back side of the screen because we're going to be pulling the squeegee across the trough side, and you don't want your squeegee just to rip the tape off. So you can see that the paper all fits here. It would be underneath my screen, and now I'm going to be taping down my Mylar, which is what I use for registration. So I want to make sure that my stencils will completely land on top of this Mylar, and that I can actually flip the Mylar back and forth here. And so when I tape it down, I want to use one long piece of tape that covers most of the edge of the Mylar. So you don't want to do little tiny pieces, because then the Mylar is going to wiggle around way too much. So I do one long piece here and make sure it's adhered really well. And that's because if I print on this and the Mylar shifts around from print to print, I could have registration that's off from one print to the next just by a little millimeter or centimeter, and that can be enough to really screw up the addition. So that's taped down really well, and once that is done, I've got my my spacers on, my paper's ready, then I'd be pretty much ready to print.